All right, so the e-commerce project relies on several different things. One of them being Django, the Django project or djangoproject.com, Python, python.org, Git Bootstrap, and also Heroku and the Heroku tool belt. The Heroku tool belt includes Git, which is a version control system, which basically allows us to track all of our changes and then upload all those changes to our GitHub as well as our Heroku account. Which our Heroku account will allow us to have a real live website on an actual domain that people can go and visit, including yourself. So you will see, once we get to a point where the project is done and ready to be on Heroku, you'll actually be able to see it in real time. And that link for that project will be on our GitHub. So if you go here, I don't have it up yet because, frankly, it's not done yet. So because we haven't done it. E-commerce, when you go to this actual URL, you'll see the link for it. Now, this video is going to assume that you already have pip installed on your computer, that you already have Python installed on your computer, and you most likely have Heroku installed as well. Heroku and Git is an optional step because Git itself, Git itself, this version control is a little bit outside of the context of the e-commerce project itself, because you don't really need to learn the Git version control to understand how web development works. Git is a added benefit to bringing your website up and ready to go. So that being said, if you want to learn Git, if you want to understand it more, the documentation has quite a few things. There's a lot of places where you can learn it. Or you can check out Coding for Entrepreneurs Core. We have a full class on it, and there's a whole section on Git, and also just using Git, the Git basics, and then also deploying to Heroku. So if you need any more details on that, that is where you could go. All right, so now that that's all out of the way, what we're going to be doing in this one, or at least at this time, is we're going to be using version 1.6. And right now what you see here is 1.6.5. You might see 1.6.7 or 8, or you might even see 1.7, but you're going to stick with 1.6. And if yours says 1.7 right here, you're going to go ahead and ignore that, only because 1.7 has some pretty big changes, but it's not ready to actually be live code. Now, in the e-commerce project, if 1.7 comes out with the videos, I will upgrade all of the code here to work with 1.7, and it will actually be related to 1.7, not 1.6. So we will bring it up to date once 1.7 actually comes out. And as far as the video goes and you following along with it, you should look to see previous releases and use the latest version of 1.6. So what you see here is Django 1.5.8. That is an updated version of 1.5, and it has 0.8, so it's the actual version of 1.5 that's actually there. And you even see 1.4.3. This is, I believe, the last version of 1.4 they will support. So 1.6, at some point, you'll see 1.6.6, 1.6.7, something like that here. And to install that will be the exact same way, but you just change this number here. All right, so let's actually finally get our project started by opening up Terminal. And I'm going to put it on my desktop just for easy access. You can put it wherever you want, but I'm going to start a brand new virtual environment. So virtual env e-commerce, and then I'll do n to change to run another command, and I'll change into e-commerce. So it's going to start the virtual environment and change into e-commerce. There's a lot of reasons as to why we want to use a virtual environment, and I'll show you those in just a second. But this little command here, and will work on Windows or Mac. And if we change back into the last directory, notice that all I did was I typed out virtual environment, and then I pressed enter, and then I went cd e-commerce, and that's all that this and does. It just changed together commands. So and source bin/activate. All right, so now we have our e-commerce virtual environment activated. And if I do pip freeze, I'll see that either this is installed or nothing's installed there. That's okay. So if I deactivate it and do pip freeze, I'll see on my system I have all this other stuff installed. You might not have this many things installed, but you will see virtual environment, some version of virtual environment installed here, and that's what you want to see. That's because it should be installed, because otherwise we wouldn't have been able to activate our virtual environment. So now that it's deactivated, I need to activate it again, and with source bin /activate on Mac and Windows, it's /scripts/activate. That's how you'll do it there. All right, so now we need to install Django. So to install the version of Django we want, we do == and then it's 1.6.5 in this case. Again, if 1.6.7 is out, use that one. Use the latest version of 1.6. And eventually we will get into 1.7, just to be extra repetitive. Okay, so press enter, have it install, downloading, all that. And while that's happening, I'm actually going to go into getbootstrap.com, and in our getting started, I want to make a few notes here. Is we can download Bootstrap if you want, or we're going to be using just the general Bootstrap CDN. Now, this is another thing about versions, is if you see a different version here, some things about the code, like I'm using 3.2.0, might be subtly different. So when it comes to code on either Django project or Get Bootstrap, use what's live on their server. So if this says 3.3, use that version, especially for Bootstrap. Django's a little bit different because it's back-end stuff. So Bootstrap's front-end stuff. The difference between those two things are what the user sees. So this is all front-end. See how we see Bootstrap and all this? Where Django, the user won't really see it. They won't see things working. They'll just experience it, right? Where Bootstrap, you see things working. So that's even more reason to use their latest version, no matter what it is. Even if it says 3.4 or even 4 point whatever, like you would want to use that version and then just default to their documentation. I do not believe that they will change it so much that this video will just be unbelievably this series will be not very accurate, but at the end of the day, it's all going to be here. So even if that doesn't work out correctly, the reference code will be on our GitHub. All right, so now Django's installed. Perfect. So let's do django-admin.py, start project. And if you're on a Windows, you'll do Python. It's /scripts/django-admin.py. Or if you're on Windows, this is how you're going to do it, and then your project name. So we're going to call our project e-commerce. So django-admin.py, start project e-commerce. And we press enter if we list everything out, or dir if you're on a Windows. We can see that e-commerce is there, include, lib, bin. Perfect. That's exactly what we want. So let's actually change into e-commerce. And we see this is the root of our project, where this is the root of our virtual environment. This is the root of our project. And the reason we know it's the root of our project, one of the things is that manage.py is here. And then we have our setting or our configuration folder, which is going to be the name of the project. So in this case, it's e-commerce. That's where our configuration folder lives. All right, so now that we have this, we are ready to actually run our first command on Django. And I'll do python manage.py syncdb. So this is syncing the database. This is a command to sync the database to whatever settings we have set up in our Django project. So if I hit enter, it says it's going to create all these tables for me, and then it's going to ask me if I want to make a super user, or if I want to define a super user. And a super user would be you, so whoever's running the site. It's not a regular user, it's not a staff user, it's the ultimate user, the one that has all the permissions that they would need. So yes, you would want to create them, and you can make a username, and then put in an email, and put in a password. Now, it's not going to show the password, but this password also could be really easy. I literally use 1, 2, 3 for this, specifically to allow us to, because I don't really need a solid password for local testing in this case. There will be a point where you might, on your local database, you might actually want to have a solid password, because if you have a bunch of users using it or you're using real live data, you might have to want to have a solid password. But since we're just learning right now, we can just use 123 or whatever easy password that you can. And also, codingforentrepreneurs@gmail.com is a real email address. You can actually send us an email there and get some data specifically from us. All right, so now that we see this, all we see is everything is installed. It's ready to go. So if I do python manage.py syncdb again, it's not actually going to create anything. And that's what we want to see. It's already created. So now that it's already in the database, it doesn't need to be added again. Once you add it once, it's added. It's there. It's done. You can't make really any changes to any of this stuff without some extra work. So let's just leave that for now, and then we'll do python manage.py and we'll run server. So this command, it emulates a real live server. So a real live website is all it's emulating right here. But it only emulates it on your local computer, right? It's not a real website. So if I copy this and then go into my onto my Google Chrome browser, I can click that in and you'll see this. So congratulations, you made your first Django powered page. You should have seen this already if you've set up everything, but that's all that is. It's not a real web server. So if I cancel this server, right, with Control C as it tells me to, and do a refresh here, it's going to say it can't connect. And that's because we don't have it running anymore. So every time we want to test something in real life, that's how we'll do it. All right, so that's it for now. In the next one, we're actually going to get started actually building some stuff. We have our settings pretty much ready to go. So yeah, we will see you in the next one.